I think for the longest time, I wanted to be just a filmmaker. And I think what I've evolved into is, I guess the best way to describe it would be a mixed media filmmaker. That's what I am.
That's basically like different than art and it's different than films, but it's kind of like a mixed. Can you explain that, what that means? When I saw your content, you were doing basically somebody's profile picture. You kind of do like a holographic of a person. It's their life still. And then you have these animations that go over it. It's such a unique approach.
But what I was doing was take their profile picture and then create this kind of collage animation. And it's fun to do, just kind of a way to be like kind of collaborative with my audience and make something cool.
Even with AI coming in, like there's nobody that's ever going to be able to replicate that mind that creates that way. Do you worry about like AI coming in, taking your jobs or anything like that? Do you worry about being a creative in the space? Where do you see video going like in the future? What is your biggest pet peeve in the creative industry that people wouldn't expect?
Oh man, that's a hard one. I feel like these are kind of questions I need to like really think
on. Welcome to the JV Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Vasquez. What is up, everybody? I am super excited because we have a gentleman named Kyle up on this podcast today, and I've been following Kyle. I was just telling him offline that I've been following him for probably about a year and a half now, and there's this band that I heard from one of his videos that I was like, all of a sudden, I like this band. The song fits so perfectly, Kyle, in your reel at that time, and it was an Andrew Kamen song. Actually, I'm going to be playing that song at the end of this episode, so every time I create an episode, I share a song that I really like or that I'm like into at the time. I'm a big music guy. I think you are too. Mm-hmm. So if you want to introduce yourself to everybody right now, Kyle, go ahead and just give a quick intro, where you're at, where you're from, what you do, and then we're going to dive into your story.
Yeah, I'm Kyle Richard McCarthy. I go by Kyle Make Short Films on the internet. I make mixed media short films, and I'm a storyteller, creative person, animator. Yeah.
Do you feel weird saying that out loud? I feel like you were saying that right now, and you like felt this like weird kind of like. Does that sound weird to you to say that out loud?
Yeah, it's funny because it's like I think for the longest time I wanted to be just a filmmaker, and I think what I've evolved into is is like something not necessarily. It's I guess the best way to describe it would be a mixed media filmmaker. That's what I am. But I'm not a traditional filmmaker. I'm not a traditional animator. You know, I operate in this unique space, I think, on the internet.
Got you. Yeah. And I think it's cool. So what you do is different. Can you explain what mixed media actually means? Because that's basically like, it's different than art and it's different than films, but it's kind of like a mixed. Can you explain that, what that means?
Yeah. So I think mixed media for me is just the use of lots of different types of textures in order to create a piece of art or tell a story. So with film, I like to use anything from old film clips to old newspapers, and using all these kind of different sources in order to tell a story, you know, like not being so rigid about how you tell a story. So like, you know, with filmmaking, I used to approach film by it all had to be shot on the same exact camera, had to look the same way, you know, through and through. But what I love about mixed media is like when you blend really old crappy cameras with really beautiful, nice cameras, it creates a unique effect. And like, so yeah, I guess that's what I'm going for these days, is kind of mixing all these textures together and make something new out of it.
Yeah, I think that's such a cool thing to do. And again, that's why I originally, when I saw your content, you were doing, this was like years ago. I don't even know if you're still doing this, but you were doing basically somebody's profile picture. You were drawing around it. It's so hard to see. You guys will probably see this right now as I'm talking about it. I'm going to have the video guy edit this over so you guys can see what I'm talking about if you're watching it visually. But essentially you kind of do like a holographic of a person. It's their life still. And then you have these animations that go over it. And it's such a cool thing because I haven't really seen anything like it before, which drew me to you. And then I started diving into your story a little bit more, but it's such a unique approach. How did you come up with that idea? And did that get you into that, did you get a lot of people doing that with you? Because you were doing it for free, I think, for a while.
Yeah, for a while I was doing this series called our profile animation series, which I'm still doing. I'm trying to take it into real life, where I'm asking like creators that I know in real life, like if I could turn their profile picture into an animation. But what I was doing was, just kind of putting it out there. If people left a comment on a profile series video, I would take their profile picture as the main source and then create this kind of collage animation out of just using that, and then trying to create something that kind of unfolds and animates. And fun to do, just kind of a way to be like kind of collaborative with my audience and make something cool.
Yeah, I think you have, again, like one of those unique storytelling capabilities because I mean, I've been in, I'm going to say sales for a long time. And I think that one of the greatest things that somebody's able to do, whether and I don't know if this is something you ever want to do to a certain degree, or maybe this is something that you feel you need to do on your own, but like getting on a stage and speaking or, connecting, you're selling yourself away and it's different. And what I'm trying to say is, and you might not even think about yourself like a salesman, but essentially what you're doing is you're crafting a sale. And if you go back and look at some of the best entrepreneurs, speakers, like they are able to capture emotion. They're able to tell a story. They're able to pin people into the idea and the concept. And that's what selling is. Like, if you really think about it, have you always had that mind to like create like that? Or is that something you always did as a kid? I think I saw that you were creating videos and stuff at the age of 13.
Yeah, I've always loved music and film and creativity. It's always just been a part of, I think my DNA is just like from being a little kid drawing to, I even like the sports I gravitated towards, like, skateboarding, like the things that are just these creative kind of outlets. I don't know. It's always been the way I kind of approach life and just love making things.
Yeah, I love skateboarding too, man. That was one of the things for me that I still skate to this day. I don't know if you still skate or not.
Occasionally. I'm not as good.
Yeah, I'm 42. I still skate. My kids, I have older kids now that still skate. So like I'll go with them and ride around and stuff. But like, I just love that ability to, and this is something early for me, and we'll talk about this for you, but skateboarding for me was an outlet. First off, I didn't feel like I fit in with the group of people that I was around. I loved music too. I grew up like into punk rock. I mean, I'm wearing a Misfits shirt today, but like I grew up like listening to Lagwagon and NoFX and like all these punk rock bands. I don't know if you've heard of them before, Rancid, stuff like that. And I really just fell into that culture. And when you talked about DNA, like when you start to skateboard and you get into these certain cliques, like that's essentially what happens. You start to become kind of engulfed by this creative outlet, but it's also a culture. And that culture is like, it's not like, culture as in like I'm Hispanic. It's not that kind of culture. It's a unique culture that anybody, doesn't matter what your skin color is, your background, like you're automatically accepted. If I walked onto a skate park right now in Philadelphia or in New York, like I would be accepted as a skateboarder in that space. And that's some of the things that I really love about skateboarding is that you have this unique ability to be able to connect with somebody. It doesn't matter where you are, they're another part of the world, what your skin color looks like, what your background is, who your family is, like you're absorbed in this community. Is that something that you felt like when you were growing up or starting, you were falling into those crowds, like that's where that skate kind of culture took you in and you are still doing that now? Because I see that in some of the stuff you're doing, it still has that kind of that culture feel to it.
Yeah. I always like loved like skateboarding culture in general, like anything from the art on skate decks to like skate videos that were like just really cool, unique ways to storytell in their own way, I felt like. And I very much like wanted to be like on a skate team. I wanted badly to have like a skate crew. And it's funny, I think it's part of how I've always been, is like I always felt like no one was asking me to be on their team. So I like made my own team, like I started my own crew. Like I always like felt like I had to like create out of like a feeling of like, oh, like the kids that really shred, they're not asking me to be a part of their team. All right, I'm going to start my own team. And so like I had a team called Image Skateboards, and we would like, everyone on the team would just write an I on their skateboard. And like, it was cool to like kind of, to foster that. And like, I don't know, I feel like that's kind of how I approach creativity in general, is like feeling like an outsider a bit and like wanted to create something, a community out of that.
Yeah. Did you feel like you wanted to bring everybody else in, like maybe the people that weren't necessarily like in the crew, or how there's like skate crews, like people like who were super good, like they stuck together, and if you were a guy on the outside and you're trying to learn, they would I don't know, skate culture, so it's such a weird thing. I'm talking about community right now, but they still have these subgroups of people that are like, we're badasses, we're sponsored by a local team, like we're not going to talk to the people that are trying to skate underneath us. In fact, we're going to kind of bully them in a way. You almost have like these like you almost have these like little cultures that are in the culture, and it's like basically a bunch of skateboarders that have an ego, just like with anything, right? They think they're badass, and they create their crew. So you're almost like, and I was that way too, where I'd see these guys and I'd be like, man, they're freaking awesome, like they're doing 360 flips down a 6 stair, and I wanted to be able to do stuff like that, but they won't even let me in. And the times that you do get to skate with them, it's like you get excited about it, but they're not always the nicest. And so I get that's what you're saying is like you created your own kind of team.
Yeah, yeah,
It was outside of those guys, right?
yeah, exactly.
Got you, got you. So what I was reading too about how you went to college. Was that around filmmaking?
No, I actually went to school for history,
History.
which is funny. Like I think I just didn't think it was an option to be a filmmaker. I thought like you're supposed to do your creativity and your passion outside of your whatever 9 to 5 you end up going the route of. But in hindsight, part of me wishes I did go to film school, but
You wish you did?
yeah,
Like what makes you wish that like now? Because I feel like you're a pretty successful dude. Like what makes you feel like you wish you would have went to this film school?
well, I guess, yeah, it's funny because I've always operated outside of like the film world and figured out my own kind of path. But I think a lot of it was like kind of trial by error, just like trial by fire and like figuring out all these things that like when you go to film school, they teach you like, and you learn all these rules that like I had to like kind of figure out through, you know, in my own way. I guess it's either you go to film school or you put in the 10,000 hours of doing it, something, but it would have maybe got me a little bit ahead.
Do you feel like you put 10,000 hours into filmmaking?
I think so at this point. Yeah. I dedicated, I feel like at least about a decade plus to trying to be a filmmaker. So I think,
I love that, dude. Do you feel like, and I'm sorry, I'm like bombarding you with the questions right now. You guys are gonna have to go check out his content, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's his web page or on Instagram. It's Kyle Makes Short Films. Go check him out because he has like it's such a cool way to animate and put things together. So you guys will know what I'm talking about more when you go watch his content. I'm gonna make sure I put a link in the show notes to this. But Kyle, like you grew up in is it in New York, right?
yeah, I grew up in Long Beach, New York, which is on Long Island.
On Long Island. Okay, cool. Do you feel like that city has given influence to what you're creating right now?
I think so in a way. I feel, I don't know, there must be some kind of creative energy here because like people like for a very small little barrier island I grew up on, Rick Rubin's from here, MF Doom, Lil Peep, Billy Crystal, a lot of like creative people come from this little island here. So I think something about it is special and has influenced me as a creative person.
Billy Crystal, man. I remember that guy
Yeah.
in what was he in? Freaking City Slickers. I
City
love that movie.
Slickers, great film. Yeah, yeah.
That's such a good film. Okay, cool. So you essentially went to school to be a history teacher, I'm assuming, right? You were going to be a
Yeah,
teacher.
yeah.
That's what your goal was. You're not teaching now, right?
No.
No.
So
You're like,
yeah, I never did anything with that degree. I was in my last semester at grad school when Hurricane Sandy happened. And it was one of those moments where I had my camera with me during the whole experience, filmed my house being wrecked by it. And it was one of those moments where I was just like, life is too short not to pursue what you love. And, filmmaking's what I love doing. So yeah, I've been on a journey since then to do that.
yeah. When was that Hurricane Sandy?
That was 2012.
2012.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you've been in the game for like 12 years now, essentially.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like it hasn't always been a like straight path. It's like I'm married, I have 3 kids. I've always like taken jobs like day jobs and stuff like that to support my family throughout this time. But recently I'm actually finally taking that leap into just doing video full time, which is a little bit scary but exciting that at this place in the journey where I feel comfortable that that's the right move to do. So yeah.
Dude, I feel like you should have been on your own like fucking years ago. Like, let's talk about this because I feel like I remember when I first went from my W-2 job, and just real quick, Kyle, because we don't know each other very much, but I had a job where I worked for a healthcare company. I was in sales, basically a fancy way of saying sales, a business development manager. And in 2020, when COVID hit, I was doing the real estate stuff, learn like kind of like Airbnb, midterm rentals is what we call it out here. 30 days at a time. We rent it to people that are traveling, business travelers, people like that. Creatives even stay in properties like this, like San Francisco, New York, LA. They'll kind of travel, bounce around. And I decided to leave this cush $200,000 job. And when I did this, dude, my family was like, my daughter, who is 20 now, called my mom. In the Hispanic culture, like if your granddaughter calls the grandma to say, my dad just quit his job, like that's the worst thing. My mom calls me, dude, and she's like, why would you do that? You're never going to find another job like this. Like, this was the worst decision you ever made. My wife even was like, this is stupid. You're never going to be able to make money from this. Like, who's going to rent an Airbnb in Central California? Like, nobody's going to want to do that. But like, I believed in what I did to the point so much that it didn't matter what I was hearing from the outside. Is that
Yeah.
something that you kind of, because you got to take this? This is another thing. I'm going to take another approach here. As a father, maybe this is not how you were raised, maybe it was, but like in my culture, we have to, like, the man always handles everything. Like the
Mhm.
guys that goes to work, you take care of the family, like you're the protector, like you're doing all these things, and you're the resource. Like that was what I was taught was the goal, to make sure to take care of the family. Like, but when you have these like passions, they don't always align with taking care of your family the way that you want to, because obviously it's a passion or a hobby. We're going to call it a hobby right now. Obviously, they can bring money in, but also you have that duty of like being able to supply for the family. So what was that struggle like in your head, man? Like doing both, and it's a lot of time you're probably missing time with your kids to a certain degree, but because you're sitting behind a computer editing and doing all those things. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I just, for the longest time, I've always taken like day jobs that didn't require any of my creative energy, so that all my creative energy was used towards my filmmaking stuff. But it just got to a point where, for the last couple of years, I've worked at a software company, and I've worked remote, and I do that kind of balance of working in the day and then at night working on video projects and stuff like that. It just got to the point where so many freelance projects have come my way over the last couple of years that it's just like, I need to put as all my energy into this. I just couldn't do balance both anymore. And it was a hard decision to make, but I ultimately think it's going to be like the right decision, for the future. So like, I'm excited for this next chapter of just being a full-time creative.
Yeah. Do you have support from your wife and like your family and stuff? Are they just like, go Kyle, go? Or are they just kind of like, man, I don't know, this is kind of scary?
No, yeah, luckily my wife's super supportive. We actually just started up a LLC together to like kind of, do all of our, she helps me a lot with different aspects of video, whether it be helping me film stuff or do illustrations that I animate and stuff like that. So like she's very much a part of my team. So I'm very excited in that. So my youngest son is finally going to school full day, start September. So all three of my kids will be in school full time. So this is a season where we're going to like really put all into our little video business here.
That's super awesome, dude. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. And the crazy thing about like what you do is you have such a unique approach. Like I thought this was already your full-time thing. Like I didn't realize you were even like I thought you were because video for people like me is like I'm like a guy that gets behind a camera and talks about something that I know. Like there's so much of that happening right now. Like if I was to go back and if I was 20 years old right now, and I was telling my kids this, if there's one thing I can go learn, like it'd be video editing or like learning how to do kind of what you're doing, because I feel like even with AI coming in, like there's nobody that's ever going to be able to replicate that mind that creates that way.
Hmm.
AI is going to do the same kind of thing. It's going to do the same sort of stuff. So do you worry about like AI coming in and like taking your jobs or anything like that? Do you worry about being a creative in this space right now? And where do you see video going like in the future?
I'm not too worried about AI. I think it's one of those things where it's like, if it's a tool that's used to help the storytelling, I think it's cool. If it's the thing that's like anything, if someone just everything is fed through the AI and that's the final product, I don't find that too interesting. But if it's used as a tool to help improve storytelling and make it easier for creatives that don't have big budgets or big teams behind them to expedite certain processes, I think that's fine. That's cool. Yeah. I'm not worried about it just yet. Maybe in a couple of years, but I find that, even in a time where AI is, a big buzzword right now and stuff like that, that like the things that I make that feel more and more handmade, people seem to like that and want to hire me to do that. So I don't know. I think people still like the things that are made by people.
Yeah, it gives that authentic kind of artisan look, like it's very unique. It's so different. And like, I love the approach, how you blend all the different types of art together and create the films. Like you're actually creating art and then you're actually putting it in a digital format, which again, you guys are gonna have to go watch this because you'll know what I'm talking about once you see it. It's like a animation of art put together. And I feel like that's such a creative outlet and such a creative way to put video and stuff together. And I think that like even somebody like me who creates kind of these like boring, like, hey, this is how you do this. This is what, like this, like that would be so cool to be able to take. And this is where I think this is where you can grow so much in this space. And this is not me being your business coach at all. I'm just thinking out loud, like being able to take somebody that has, and it's got to be the right kind of people, right? You can't just put some Joe Schmo on and be like, okay, cool, talk about freaking real estate agents. Like that'd be boring to put overlay over, but like I have to tell a story through the entire process. But I feel like that would be such a cool, unique approach for somebody to be able to see something and for it to be memorable. Because like with short form stuff, like the average American has a 4-second span of attention. Like you have to be able to capture they have to be able to stay with you beyond 4 seconds. And I think that's such a hard thing to do. And what you do is like so creative in a way. It's almost like it pulls you in to like watch to the very end, even if you're telling like a story. So can you talk about that real quick? Like what your process is like for creating a story?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's been a lot of trial and error and figuring out. I find that there's certain stories that are really important to me. And a lot of times I try to figure out different ways to shape those stories and retell them. It's hard. I wish I had like a formula or something that I knew of like that works. But a lot of it's just like, I have these stories that are important to me. Let me try telling it this way. And if it doesn't work, maybe, a year from now, I'll try telling that same story again in a different way. That's a lot of times how it goes with me. I don't know. And I think the longer I've done like making short form storytelling videos, I've realized there are certain like rules or like, like having a good hook is important to like get someone in like you're saying, in those first couple of seconds. And like I used to like kind of I'm not gonna like pay attention to those rules, but I think there is some value in like knowing how to like kind of use those hooks to then kind of sneak in something cool, instead of like, just trying to get their attention and keep their attention, but to like get them in for something interesting and worthwhile. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally does. And I think this is where it gets like, this is where I feel like it'd be difficult because a lot of the stuff that you create is like for yourself. Like it's your stories. Like I just watched something about one of your friends that passed away when he was 16. And, you're telling the story from your perspective, and which I think is what's amazing. And then I just watched you, which is super awesome. And I'm super stoked for you. You did a Mercedes kind of, you landed a deal with Mercedes, which is pretty freaking awesome. Like, I think that's like, did you feel like pretty awesome, like getting that contract together with them? Was that like, yeah, I made it?
It was super cool to have a huge brand like that reach out to me and send me a car for a week.
Talk about that, dude. Let's hear, like, what did that feel like? What is that? Did that give you that push of like, dude, I could do this. Like this, I have the ability to do, I wanted to do my dreams, like art, to create content. Is that what happened? Or can you
I mean, honestly, this last like year and a half has been that for me. Just these like big brands and musicians have wanted to work with me, and it's very like exciting and affirming. Like, like I've done some stuff with Patreon, with Vimeo,
Rolling Stones,
the Rolling Stones, Blondie, and then so like a brand like Mercedes-Benz to reach out to me and want me to make a video for them. It's just like, it's one of those surreal kind of like milestones of like, all right, I think I'm in the right direction. Like, I'm very like blessed and lucky that like right now, like everything I work on, video work, is like all inbound. Like people are just, these projects keep on coming in, and I'm just like stoked for it.
Yeah, dude, that's such a cool feeling. I remember when I first had and it wasn't even like a big brand or anything, but I remember when I was like starting off not starting off, but I've been doing it for a while, but I had this contractor guy that came to me and he's like, man, I really see what you're doing and I understand it now and it makes sense. And it was like that first time that I had somebody that wasn't in my immediate family that wasn't telling me like, oh, you suck at this, you can't do it or whatever. Some random dude that saw the potential, and that just like sparked something in me where I'm like, I know that what I've been talking about, even though the people that are too close to me are probably, they're too close to see my greatness. Because they don't live between your ears, right? You think of the way you think, and luckily you had a spouse that supports what you were thinking about and all that stuff. I didn't have that. Everybody's like, you're crazy, you're gonna leave this job. But then you get that ancillary like support from another person that sees what your vision is and gives you that kind of credibility. But I think it's such an awesome thing for you to have Rolling Stones and Patron. Even I think you did work with Coachella too, right?
Yeah.
Which is pretty freaking amazing, man. Like that's like, if that's not validity, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's crazy. And then I don't know if you saw, I just put a video out. next month I'm going to Switzerland with a bunch of creators for a week. And that just feels like just a real like, wow, this is an incredible moment that like, the tourism board of Switzerland is flying a whole bunch of creative people to Switzerland for a week. It's pretty rad.
That's freaking amazing. What are you guys supposed to do there?
So there's this group called Creator Camp. Have you ever heard of them?
Yeah, I have.
So they create these kind of really awesome creative retreats, and I actually just went to one up in the Catskills back in May, where they get like really talented YouTubers, Instagrammers, TikTokers together for a week and just kind of collaborate and do workshops. And so they're doing this partnership with the tourism board of Switzerland and fly in. They sent out invitations to 80 different creatives, and I'm grateful to be on that list. And they're gonna fly us out to Switzerland for like a 3-day retreat, and then gonna do a kind of tour of the country. And it's pretty wild, pretty cool.
Create stuff, man. It was like Mr. Beast gonna be there with you or what?
Not Mr. Beast, but there's some big names there that I'm really stoked about. Like, do you know Gox?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
That's like someone who like is going to be there that I'm like, that's my Mr. Beast.
Do you feel like when you get into a room with people like that, do you feel like you belong there?
That's an interesting question. I think so, to be honest, but the thing is, when I go, like when I went to this retreat back in May, it's funny because you said you're 42. I'm 36, and I was like probably the oldest person there. Like a lot of these creators are like, in their 20s and stuff like that. And so it was cool that it's like, yeah, I've like put in my time to be here. Like I've been working at it. And, there's a part of me that wants to go into it being like kind of resentful of like, these kids are like in their 20s and they're finding success. Like I had to struggle with no one seeing anything I made during my 20s. But the reality is like, like all the people are amazing, cool people. And I'm so like, excited for them and rooting for them, and I'm grateful that like, that I get to be in that room too,
Yeah, I think that is a that's a thing that I feel like a lot of people struggle with. I mean, myself, like I know that when I got in a room around like these super highly successful people, I was like, do I even belong here? And I think that as you start to do this stuff more often, you're going to start to realize like you do belong there and you do have a voice. And I think once you have that, dude, and I was looking to see how fast you're going to respond, like how fast you're going to say, yes, I belong there. You're still in that like gray area where like I'm around these people right now. There's going to be a moment, Kyle, where it flips and you're just going to be like, I belong here. I know I do. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. And once that happens in your head, like, I feel like, again, this is my own, in my own space, because we all have our own niches that we're in. Right. But that was that moment that things changed for me, where like, I realized that first off, I wasn't the smartest person in the room. I didn't understand it. Like you start to absorb so much stuff from other people, but I do get what you're saying, where you're like, you had it in your 20s, you were out there busting ass to get stuff done. And then you see these 23-year-olds that are just like freaking 1 million followers, and they're probably making freaking $1 million a year, and you're putting the time and energy in. But I do believe that like what you have is a lot more skill and reps that those people don't necessarily have. And I think the thing too now, maybe you're coming into the business world now, where it's like art is one thing, and then when you marry that with the business and you understand business on another degree, dude, that's where like stuff starts to just take off. And I think that if you don't have a partner that has a business mindset, I would urge you to like really connect with somebody that has that mindset, that is going to 2.0, 3.0. Because for me, like I always thought I had to do everything on my own. Hey everyone, if you are feeling stuck or not like you're making the progress you want in your midterm rental journey, I've got something that can change everything for you. Imagine being part of a community that's not only supportive, but filled with like-minded individuals who are driven to succeed just like you. Whether you are just starting out, looking to take care of your business to another level, my community is designed to help you break through those barriers. We're currently opening up registration for new enrollees, so if you're serious about building a thriving midterm rental business and you want to leverage my 10,000 hours of experience, this is your chance. Don't miss out on the opportunity to learn, grow, and connect with others in the same path. I hope to see you guys. The link is in the show notes, and let's build something incredible together. Let's get back to this episode. Do you feel like you do everything on your own?
Yeah. And I'm trying to get better at like at allowing other people to help in that process. Like I do recently, I have a manager now for my brand partnerships and stuff like that. Because personally, I do like doing the creative side way more than I like doing the business side and figuring out the budgets and stuff like that. So having someone to help me with that is cool and helpful.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I think one of the things too is like some of the most successful business entrepreneurs that I've seen, they'll connect with somebody that doesn't have the skill that they do. So you have like, if you're thinking about like a pendulum, like you'll have somebody that's super experienced with art, and then you have to have that business acronym to kind of balance it out. And I feel like the people that I've watched, whether it's art or music or something, they had that counterpart that was able to swing that. I think it's always going to go like this, right? You're always going to have business is going to push one way, and it's going to decrease the art to a certain degree. And then the art's going to come, because I feel like art's one of the most difficult businesses to be in because it's so competitive. But if you're able to be in that 1%, and I think you are, because you have such a creative kind of outlet to these things, that's where the immense opportunity for business growth. But you're seeing now, like certain people are coming to you now. You're not chasing contracts anymore. Like they're coming to you. And I think that's such a beautiful thing to have. Kyle, that like, do you ever think about that where you're now attracting these folks and you're not chasing the clients anymore?
Yeah, it's really cool. And I think what's important to me is I want to find a way to just create sustainability in it. Like my goals aren't necessarily to build the biggest mixed media film business there is, but if I could find that little pocket of, the internet where I can make cool stuff and work with really cool clients on, that sounds like a dream, a dream come true.
Yeah, I agree to that. Is this the biggest risk you've taken so far in your career? And like, I mean, obviously I think it's going to pay off for you, but like, what's the most significant risk you've taken so far in your career? And, how did it pay off?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably the biggest, but I think I've always kind of been on this trajectory of where, when I turned down going into education, I was still figuring out how to be a filmmaker. So I had to take I worked at a Parks and Recreation department and for a number of years, and it was not, not a good financial, job. I didn't make a lot of money or have good benefits or anything. But the only benefit it had or gave me was that like, if I needed to, on a dime, say tomorrow I have to take off because I have this job in the city to film something, I could do that,
Flexibility.
And so, yeah, that flexibility. And so that was a big risk to take in that time to not like go into education, find stability and stuff like that. And to like kind of hustle through that time and know that like I had to kind of hustle for it. And I think if I didn't, I feel it's weird because like, those things like if you could go back in time and change the route, would you? And I don't. I think I needed every kind of like weird twist and turn to happen the way it did for me to get to where I'm at now. And so like, it's funny to even think like 5 years from now, what are my film goals look different from like what my 5-year film goals were, 5 years ago. And what I want or desire as a creative person keeps on shifting. So I think more than anything, I'm just like more excited for the unknown of it all than I used to be, which is like, all right, no, I need to, get some films into film festivals. I need to get a Vimeo staff pick. I need to get this and that in order to get a studio to see me and then let me make a film. Like now I'm like, I just want to do it all on my own. I don't need a studio. Like, I want to figure out a way to just make the things I want to make.
Yeah. So that actually leads me to this question with you then. Because you've created stuff, and I kind of talked about this earlier with like Mercedes and some of these other people. When you're approached by collaborations with major brands, how do you still tell your story but in their voice? Like, what has that process been like for you? Has it been hard to, kind of absorb those things? Are you picking and choosing who you work with now, or like what is that process like?
I try. It's hard. It is one of those seasons where like it's more important what you say no to than what you say yes to. And saying yes to the right projects. I think I'm kind of lucky in that I feel like for the most part, the brands of people reaching out to me are reaching out to me because they want me to do my thing on, for them, which is, like, and I think it's a big red flag if someone reaches out to me and they don't want me to do that because, like you just hire an editor, then hire someone, like if you want to hire me to bring something that I my unique approach to filmmaking, like I think that's the best use of my time at the moment, like, so I don't know, I feel really lucky that I'm able to do that right now. Like I, just did some projects with, Patreon. Do you ever use Patreon at all?
Yeah. I know exactly. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So we did like a project where we spotlighted 4 different very successful podcasters on their platform. And it was super cool because they wanted me to lean into my style and tell it in my mixed media style.
Yeah.
And so like projects like that are so exciting and cool for me to like, when people are like, no, lean into your style, not like hold back at all, and
Yeah.
those usually yield the best results when I'm able to kind of like freely do my thing.
Yeah, I've worked with brands before, and they're just like, "We need to have this video, and when you're done with it, we need to okay it. It needs to be green lighted, and you got to make sure to say this. We want this part taken out." And it almost feels like your creative expression is no longer even there. Like you're having to mold to what they want, and it's not beneficial for you or them because now you're creating something that's for somebody else that isn't necessarily your own voice. Like you're now creating something else. So do you pick projects that allow you to have full creativity?
I try to, but with anything there has to be some flexibility, and I'm not necessarily an artist that's going to like be like, if you don't let me have full creative control over it, I'm out, like I try to be, flexible in that way, but I always know that the projects that turn out the best are the ones where like, yeah, the people that are hired me specifically because they know my style already, that's always the yields the best results.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. What advice would you give to other creatives looking to like start partnering with brands like that? Not necessarily big brands, but other brands. Like what do you feel would be beneficial for other creatives to know?
It's funny because I was just chatting with a friend today who is like starting to really blow up on Instagram, and he has this really unique style to him. And I was saying how like he was telling me how brands are starting to reach out to him, but it's not anything he's really interested in. And he was saying how he wants to hold out for like, something that seems like a good fit. And I was like, dude, that's definitely the approach to take. I think if you're a creative person and you start making really cool stuff and people start to recognize it and videos take off online, you're going to get advertisers and people are going to start to pay attention to you. But if you're creating something really organic and unique, don't feel so rushed to like, I got to say yes to every opportunity that comes my way, but to really like hold out for like, all right, this feels like a organic, kind of partnership. Like it's something you could get behind. Like don't like sell yourself out. Like,
Like for money.
Yeah. I mean, if you can, if you could, like, I definitely, when I first started out, I said yes to a lot of like projects that maybe didn't fully like organically like align with what I make, but like I just felt like I had to say yes to everything, but like now I don't know, but I give that advice, but it's hard for me to take it my own, take my own advice. Is like I often say yes to way too many projects and then like have to figure out how to like make it all work.
Yeah, I think when people first start off, they do say yes to everything. I mean, a couple of businesses that I started, I would take every client on the planet because I just wanted to bring more people in. Then I started realizing like this person and I didn't have like our personalities didn't fit. And then now I'm dealing with their personality conflicts 6 months later when I knew in my gut from the beginning that this was going to be an issue. Like, exactly what I'm talking about. You'll work with a client that's like super nitpicky. I don't like this. I want to do that. Can you take this off? Can you do that? Granted, yes, you got to do what you got to do for them. But at the end of the day, you can kind of feel like if this is going to be a partnership that I'm going to be able to have longevity with.
Yeah.
And
totally.
when you're first starting off, you're just like, give me everything. Like, I'll figure it out, But I think that's kind of a process though. Like you have to learn sometimes to say no. And I think sometimes taking those, uncomfortable clients, or maybe they're not the best ones, or maybe it wasn't something that you aligned with, that you eventually will, it builds you that muscle that you can eventually say no to.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've definitely experienced every type of client there can be in video, and I've tried every type of video possible. And you kind of do need to try everything in order to know what works and what doesn't. Like I realized this far into my career, I'm not a wedding videographer. I can't do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's not my strong suit. It's a lot of work and high pressure. And, like I feel most comfortable in the editing room and, telling stories, like learning to figure out what it is that you do the best. And then really leaning into that is like my best advice to any creative people is like, keep on leaning into what makes you kind of unique and what you have to offer the unique perspective on.
Yeah. Do you feel like anybody can be a creative?
Yeah. I think everyone has some kind of creativity in them. It just manifests in different ways,
Yeah. Yeah. So you feel like anybody can just pick up a phone and create and tell a story and just, I think, I feel like that's such a hard thing to do for me. But I've watched other people that I know that are just like, man, they can walk into a room and they know like already what story they want to tell. They know exactly where the camera is going to go. They know exactly when they're going to open up a, refrigerator door and pull something out, what that shot's going to look like, what they want the lighting to look like. Like it's already 3D mapped in their head, like from the beginning to the end. And it's so wild. Like I'm getting goosebumps talking about this because I love this creative part of stuff where people can see everything in color already. Like Rick Rubin talks about this in his book, that like there's certain creatives that have the ability to see and think and see everything in color, like literally watch the entire video that they're going to make in their head over the next like 1 minute. And other people, like they have to be in a room and they got to mess around with stuff and they got to figure out what works. Yeah. How do you do that? Like, are you seeing it in your head already? Do you have ideas or, how does that kind of play out in your head?
I think it's changed over time. Like when I used to make short films, I would really think about it over and over in my head. And that's what working a crappy job was helpful for, is like, there's times where I had to run errands for my job where I'd be in a car just driving and I'm like, all right, what if the film, like I'd be planning out scenes in my head. And then eventually, you try to translate that into something, and it always is, the end product's always different from how you imagined in your head. But in the last several years, like the more I lean into mixed media, I find that like the way I kind of tell stories best is like I write out a script, I record a voiceover, and then I put that on like my timeline, and then I just try to figure out like what things can I use to tell the story. What like existing clips do I already have? What I need to go film in order to like make this into something. That's kind of how I approach things these days. So very edited heavily.
Gosh, do you feel like you have like a super unconventional path of how you shaped your business? Like, because you didn't go to film school, which you said that you wish you would have now, and you kind of learned on your own, right? You just kind of like, it's almost like picking up a guitar and learning how to do things on your own. Like you went through that whole process.
Yeah, I think it's definitely unconventional. It's just the way I had to do it. I feel like, bringing it back all the way to like with skateboarding, as a little kid and just like having to do it my way and stuff like that. I think that's the way I've approached film. And yeah, I think it's really awesome, especially now we just have like with things like, TikTok and Instagram, and there's just that more space for that, to find those people who kind of like, I'm a very niche kind of creator, and there is the niche audience out there, it's just tapping into that.
I know. Isn't it crazy how like you can have like the most random idea and you can create a business out of it? Like, if somebody decided they were going to sing to rocks, like I'm serious. Like somebody's like, I'm going to sing to rocks and I'm going to turn this into a business. Like somebody can go on TikTok and like draw a mohawk on a rock. And like, literally that's all they do is sing to a rock. And dude, like that can be a business. You can have hundreds of thousands of followers, and like isn't it insane, dude? Like to think that that's the world we live in right now. It's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, it is. It's cool. It's exciting. I think there's a lot of potential right now to carve out your own kind of unique spot.
Yeah, I know. So somebody wants to take my idea, you guys are totally for it. If you're a pretty decent singer, or this is the crazy thing, Kyle, is you could be a shitty singer, like worst singer on the planet, and you sing to rocks, and like you could still have that virality. Your content can still be, viral. Like literally, it's freaking wild, man.
Yeah, man, for sure.
I think it's such a cool thing to be. What advice would you give to creators that are starting off right now that are like, man, I really love Kyle's work. Like I love what he's doing. I want to get to his position at one point. What would your advice to them be?
I think my best advice for that is to just start making stuff, like use whatever tools you have available to start. because I think often we get roadblocks in our head of like, yeah, but I don't have a good enough camera to start. I don't have a good mic system. Like all these things where like, I think funny enough, like the iPhone has been just like the biggest barrier breaker, of our lifetime of like, if you're a creative person wants to approach film, like if you have an iPhone, you're good to go. There's like, it's so funny. I have like cameras, like Sony cameras I've had for years now. And I shoot so many things on my phone. It's just the ease of it, the convenience of it. It's just like, it's never been easier. So like, I think when you're starting off, you need to just start making things and like, you're of course go into it knowing like things are going to suck. You're going to fail a lot. You're going to make things that aren't good, but you kind of got to push through that in order to get to a place where you start making things that are cool.
Yeah. I think everybody sucks when they first start off, and too many people are willing to give up during that suck. Like, yeah, it's supposed to suck. If it was easy, everybody would be freaking doing it.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And I think that a lot of people like, you probably had the ability to draw your whole, like you probably, if I drew something for you right now, you'd be like, you have the artistic capabilities of a second grader, which I've actually had an artist tell me that before. Like, you're actually still stuck in second grade. Your art is never going to surpass that. And I remember having friends, like one of my friends named Michael Cosgrove, as I was growing up, like this dude was drawing like T-Rexes and like crazy stuff, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, and continued to evolve like as his artistic talent. Like I was still drawing a little alien head that looked like the Alien Workshop, the one that says "Believe" on it.
Yeah.
Like I was drawing like those kind of guys, which I still draw that all the time. That's literally like all I can draw. I was never able to like get past that, and I just maybe didn't have the, the artistic talent. I could pick up a guitar and play music. Like I have that part of art down, and the music side of things, but never the coordination of like hand movement skills. Like I didn't have that. I always left it behind. I guess I didn't dive into that a little bit more. Do you feel like people need to have that in order to be like good creatives? I mean, I'm talking about like, how you're doing your art on top of the video, which was what you consider mixed video or mixed
media.
Do you feel like do you think people need to have that artistic talent if they want to do something like you?
No, for sure not. I think you just kind of, if you want to start it, just like, I don't know, I don't necessarily even think I'm a good drawer, to be honest. I think a lot of like things I make have like, they look kiddish, but I think a lot of my favorite artists growing up, like, think of different skateboard artists, like someone like Ed Templeton, like, the things they were making weren't like the most crazy advanced, like, art pieces, but they're so cool and unique. They have his unique, touch to it. And I think like, if you make crappy drawings, cool, make those drawings and try to animate them, like that's more impressive to me than someone who like is super good at, making 3D animations and it just looks perfect. Like, it's like, I don't know. I like to see people's unique approach.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, man. I love, for those, we're talking about Ed Templeton. He was a 90s skateboarder. He still is an artist to this day. In fact, I think he has a pretty successful business over in Huntington Beach. In fact, I just bought, it's 3 decks and it's a photo that he took. It was back in the toy machine days. Nice. It was like these guys were sitting on the, there's a photo he took. They're basically sitting on a bridge, and it's just like Tom Penny, him, and like some other people. And it's 3 boards you put up in a row, and like, that thing was like $300-$400 to pick that up just for a piece of art. And it's pretty cool. Like, that was a photo this dude took back in 1997, and it's now takes over three boards. And it's, so again, going back to what we talked about earlier, like you can create these businesses out of things that you love, and eventually like it tells a unique story in a certain way, and there's always going to be somebody that can attach to that to whatever degree. And I think that's pretty freaking amazing. All right, cool. Kyle, we're kind of coming down to the hour here. So I wanted to ask you a couple more things. What do you feel? I mean, we just talked about right now, if you were to get somebody in, if somebody's creative right now, or they're like, let's just say they're trying to sell something and they want to get out there. And, is there any specific ideas that you think are beneficial for telling stories? I mean, you talked about hook lines earlier. Like, what have you noticed about social media that's been able to get you from, the previous Kyle to this, like the next version of Kyle that you're seeing now? I think this version of you is doing the things so that you could be the next version of yourself in maybe a year from now or 3 years from now. And it sounds like you've evolved every year. Like you're evolving. You're not the same person you were a year ago. You're not the same person that is going to be the same. You're changing now, or you're evolving now to be the person that you want to become, to get on these podcasts that you want to get on, and be on Mark Maron's podcast and things like that. So like, what do you see yourself evolving to? Like, where do you see yourself going right now?
Yeah, I think this next chapter for me is about kind of funny enough, it's about like taking my time more on the things that I make and put out there. I think, over the last couple of years, I've been really consistent in trying to produce and make things and put them out there. But now that I've gotten to this place where like I've seen what works and what doesn't work as like a mixed media storyteller, I really want to hone in on really like taking my time to tell the stories in the perfect way that I want them to be put out there, if that makes sense. Like really taking my time on the animations and the whole process. Because a lot of times like videos that I make, I'm trying to like, in the past I've had to like, maybe I have an hour of the day here where I can make something that's totally rushed, but moving into this time where I'm a full-time creative, I guess my kind of hope is to just like really take my time on telling the stories I want to tell. And then, I guess like my best advice to anyone who's like wanted to use social media as those tools is to like do that part that I did first, do the experimentation, really try lots of different things and kind of use that data, see that data as constructive. When things don't do well, don't be like, just like, no, everyone hates this. Like I suck. I'm not doing something wrong, but to really like, okay, how can I shape these things differently? How can I, especially if you have like stories that you feel are important or worth sharing, keep on telling that same story over and over until you get it right.
Yeah. And like, I think that's the biggest thing is like, you tell stories in such a good way. And I watch all these other artists do that. Like, how does that even, like, how do you capture that? Because a lot of your stuff has emotion in it too. It's like, how do you capture that stuff? How do you, how would somebody else be able to be able to do that? I think that's the hard part there, is because you tell a story that has, like, there's feeling to it, and you can feel it. And the people that are listening or watching on the other end, like, they feel your emotion too. And I think that's the hard part of this stuff. And maybe it's easy for you, but I mean, I'm like, for my own self, I think that's the hard part of telling that story. And because you only have 30, 60 seconds to do it,
Well, I appreciate you saying that, but I think for me, it's just like lean with vulnerability, when I can tell when there's videos that I'm making that the subject matter is super important to me. Like a lot of those things, when they take off and they hit, it makes sense that they took off and hit because there was something really, this was very important to me, what I was sharing, and that comes through, and if you're telling stories just for the idea of like virality or for hype or get people to, buy into something, a lot of times I feel like people could see through that, So I think I love when I'm chatting with people, hearing their unique stories, the unique decisions they've made in their lives, that sometimes we don't even really give much thought about, like, and like, wow, that's really interesting that you left a $200,000 job to do, your passions, and that must've been scary. What was that like? That's something that kind of insight can be valuable to someone else who's maybe at a certain similar situation in their life where they're thinking, all right, I might make a leap like that. Like, I think as humans, the way we connect, our storytelling is such an important way to connect and understand each other and relate to each other and like learn and grow.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. I think it's, are you doing long form video stuff at all? YouTube stuff?
Yeah, that's a big goal of mine for this year. I've been trying to start doing a little bit of that, but I'm really trying to put more time and effort into that in the next couple of months. I have a couple of videos that I'm like starting to work on. I just keep on getting like sidetracked with like these other projects come in, and I'm like, have to put that to the back burner. So I'm hoping once I get like a free week.
Yeah. Do you have right now, Kyle, like, and this is me, my business brain going again, do you have people that you're working with that you can start to like, you trust their editing style enough? I feel like you're still in that control stage where you're like, I want to be able to control this. Like, it's got to be my way. Do you have these people now, maybe editors, that you're starting to like, okay, I can pass this off and he can do this part of it? Because then that's going to allow you to free up your time to go do the long form stuff, because that takes time and you got to script it and do the whole thing to it.
Yeah, that's something I got to figure out in this season.
Yeah, for sure,
But
dude.
yeah, it's still very all new, you know, eventually.
That's where you're going
But
to take off, bro. Once you're able to relinquish that control and you find somebody that you're able to like, and not that you're not taking off now. I feel like that's the next,
no,
the 2.0 version of Kyle. Like that's that next level of business that you're able to pass stuff off. You're now doing the things that you're uniquely qualified to do, and everything else you start to delegate. Not
no.
only is that going to give you free time for your kids and your family, and then to do the other things like YouTube videos and stuff like that, but you'll start to grow in this other way that I can't even explain it. Because I remember in my position, I've always been like, I want to control everything. Like that's just my personality type. I've always been that way. But dude, I could tell you once you kind of start to relinquish that and you start to think outside, like, okay, somebody else can do this. Like you just upgrade what you're doing. It's hard for me to explain out loud until you actually do it. And then you'll know what I'm talking about. Cause I can see
No,
it in your,
totally.
because you know what you're doing. Like you get it already. You probably feel just like I did, and many other people that are listening to this, they have businesses, that nobody's going to do it as good as you. And that's probably what you think. Am I right on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard to. It's one of those things. Like I remember hearing Casey Neistat on a interview talk about how he hired his friend Dan Mace, and he found that it took twice as much, it took twice as long,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
like I could have just done that myself instead of
Yeah.
explaining it. So I think a part of maybe something I have to like kind of come to grips with is that like I sometimes approach things with too much of a rushed mentality. Like I kind of like I have too many things cooking at the same time. So to come to a place where I can kind of like breathe and kind of approach stuff with at a slower pace, I think in the long term will be beneficial to me. So that's where I'm trying to go in this next season. It's like, how do I be really thoughtful about each project, about each, thing I'm approaching, and not feeling like I just have to like rush to get it done.
Yeah, dude, I totally hear you. All right, man, we're coming down the top of this recording. I appreciate you for being here. I always have rapid fire questions that I ask at the very end. So are you ready for these?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. If you woke up tomorrow as a pigeon, what would your first artistic project be?
As a pigeon.
Yeah, like if you woke up tomorrow and you're a pigeon. Like imagine like the movie Big, and you turn, instead of growing, like you turn into a pigeon tomorrow. And like, what would your first artistic project be?
I think I just spend the whole day flying around. The beauty of just experience in flight.
Yeah, Kyle basically is saying that he'd be crapping on people's heads, guys. He's saying right now. Okay, cool. What's the weirdest place you ever found inspiration? Like, were you ever just staring at a pickle and thought, "That's it. Like, this is it, a pickle." Like,
Weirdest inspiration is bathrooms, public bathrooms. There's some like creepy public bathrooms I've been in on road trips where I'm like, I still have some seeds of ideas for a film I want to make. But yeah, it was inspired by like the creepiness and that kind of horror like feeling of being in a weird, desolate public bathroom.
yeah, you know what public bathroom scene I think about because I love movies. Dumb and Dumber, when he's in there, and what's that dude's name that kicks the door down? It's like 3 a.m. at this time, and he just like kicks the door. Have you watched Dumb and Dumber?
It's been years, man. I'll be honest,
my
but I have
Yeah.
seen Dumb and Dumber.
That's such a good scene. But yeah, I know what you're talking about right now with the those old bathrooms, because some of them could be freaking.
Yeah, like you hear the light. You could I don't know. You could just like the whole space is just like.
Yeah, I totally get you. All right, next one. If you had an imaginary friend, who would be your creative advisor? Like, what would they talk to you about? Like, what kind of advice would they give you?
Imaginary friend.
Who's a creative advisor? Like, what kind of advice would it sound like they were giving you?
I think I need an imaginary friend to just kind of hype me up with the small things that I do throughout the day. Sending off emails, because those are things that I hate doing. All right, good job.
You're like, awesome. You're doing great, Kyle. You're doing awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, cool. Last one. What is your biggest pet peeve in the creative industry that people wouldn't expect?
Oh man, that's a hard one. I guess my biggest pet peeve is that not enough people use Final Cut. That's what I use to edit everything on. And I know that Adobe Premiere is the standard, but I'm like, I just like Final Cut so much more.
Final Cut. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Okay, I have one more question. I wanted to ask you this
Yeah,
first,
yeah.
but I'm going to do it now. If you could collaborate with any historical figure, who would it be, and what kind of art would you create together? And this is alive or dead.
That's a good one. I don't know. I feel like these are kind of questions I need to like really think on. Man, I don't know. That's like, I really, what's that?
Charles Manson. There you go. You guys are going to be creative. I'm just kidding. I think John Lennon. No,
Maybe. I
maybe
don't
some John Lennon.
know. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like who's like someone who would be cool to make a like a music video for like someone who's not around anymore. Jeez, I don't know. I'm drawing blanks right now.
Are you basically into indie rock right now? What are you into? Like your music style right now, Kyle?
I love everything. I'm all over the place. You know, everything from indie to hip hop to emo, screamo. Like like I love all kinds of music. I'm actually a fun thing I've been doing recently. You ever heard of the app Music League?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah,
I've been doing that with
creating.
some friends, which is super fun, like fantasy football for music nerds.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm all over the place musically right now.
that's super funny, man. Awesome. Well, I'm super glad you were here. Hopefully, there's some creatives that listen to this today. And if you guys aren't a creative, go check out Kyle's stuff. He has a Instagram channel that has over 150,000 followers, and for good reason. I think that's going to continue to grow, man. I think you're an exceptional artist and creative mixed media influencer, and I do believe you're going to be doing some freaking amazing things. But his handle is Kyle Makes Short Films. It's going to be on the description of this. I appreciate you for being here, man. This was an
Of course,
awesome
man.
kind of connection with you. And I feel
Thanks for
like,
having me.
yeah, you skateboard and do all the things. And I just love connecting with creative people, and you can definitely hear it in yourself. So go check out his stuff, you guys. It's really, really good.
Appreciate it. And do you have any last minute advice for me for as a business person the next 5 years?
Yeah, dude, I do. And I was actually going to take it offline, but you know what? I'll go ahead and I'll do this right here with you right now. I feel, and this is me not being like joking with you, I feel like you have such a creative advantage over a lot of other people, that you have this super unique style that once you're able to get past you need to bring people into your business. Like you have to bring somebody. And that's why I asked you at the beginning, I was like, do you have somebody that handles business? Because I can see your creative side, and I've watched people do this before. And Rick Rubin actually talks about this. He doesn't even know how much he charges for his studio time. Like he doesn't take care of any of that. And he said because he doesn't want to get involved in that part. That money part is actually going to ruin his business mentality. Like it'll ruin his creative art when he finds out how much stuff is. Which I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe it is. He seems like a guy that would probably be like, doesn't matter, figure it out. Like just tell me about it later or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think once you're able to marry that business side, and you have somebody that's really like on board with your growth, and you create a media company out of that, you have so much opportunity, dude, because and you guys, when you guys go watch, this isn't me talking out loud. I'm kind of talking to you like you were my friend right now. You have such a unique style that I feel like it can't be duplicated in a lot of ways. If people try, like they'll say like, oh, that's Kyle's stuff. Like that's Kyle. So that being said, I just feel like being able to separate yourself from what you're doing, to give yourself that outlet to be able to pass off jobs to other people to do them, whether that's minor editing, whether that's scripting of certain things. Like, I feel like you definitely need to do that. And once you do, that next level of growth will happen, because I could just see it. Like I could see your trajectory, the growth trajectory for you. It's like, do you want it to happen within this year to a massive degree, or do you want it to spread out over time? Like, I think you have to come up with that decision in your head.
Yeah.
Is this something I want to grow massively in 2025, or do I want to stay independent, almost like an indie band, right? Where you're just like, you're cool for that like, like the National or something. Once you get so big, like they're still big, but they're still an indie band, but they're still connected to Taylor Swift to a certain degree. Like, where do you want to go with that kind of thing? I feel like you're in that space right now. And I think you realize it in a sense, you left your W-2 job, that there's exponential growth for you. It's like you get to decide where the ceiling's at. And I think that is going to be, the process for you, where if you let go to a certain degree and you start bringing people on, which is a huge risk for you too, because you got to find the right people. And it's got to be the right people. I would hire slow and fire fast. If somebody works for you and you like them and you're digging them and they're doing stuff for you, keep them and take your time to get them. If somebody sucks and you hire them, get them out, dude. Like quickly. Don't waste time and try to nurture them. That would be my thoughts for you. But I can see I can see what you're doing now, like a multi-million-dollar business. Easily.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you were a stock right now, I'd be investing in it, bro. Like, I'm telling
dude,
you.
I appreciate that. It means a lot.
Yeah. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, there you guys go. You got some business tips for me on my end for Kyle. So you're going to see him go to the next level here pretty soon, which I think you already are, bro. Like you have so much talent. It's fucking unreal. Guys go check it out. It's phenomenal. I can't even, I'm pumping his head up right now, but I'm just telling you, bro, it's good.
Dude, it means so much to me. Thanks so much.
Yeah. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you for being here. You guys go check out his stuff. You'll dig it. Before I end this, we're actually going to be playing one of the songs that I actually heard Kyle on, and it's going to be Andrew Kamen, a song called All at Once. Such a good song, and that's what I'm ending off today. So thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you for listening to the JV podcast. I'm Jesse Vasquez, your host. I appreciate you for listening. And if you could do me a huge solid, go like and subscribe to this. This helps us tremendously. And as always, thank you so much for listening and have a wonderful rest of your day.